Pay attention to this man dancing in this footage. This is Deng Chong-majek, an asylum seeker in the UK, dancing moments after committing a horrific crime. This is the depraved dance of a murderer high on his crime. Deng Chong-majek had attacked a staff member from the asylum hotel where he was being housed. Deng Chong-majek was dancing, literally celebrating right after snapping 27-year-old Rian White and leaving her on a train platform. And when you see the footage, it's the kind of thing that makes your spine lock up. But here's where it gets even darker. This wasn't some heat-of-the-moment snap. Hours earlier, CCTV caught him just watching her inside the asylum hotel where she worked. Not a normal glance. I mean that eerie eyes wide, "I'm studying you" type stare, almost like he was waiting for the moment she'd be alone. So when Rihanna clocked out and headed to catch her train, she had no idea the same man she'd been helping was following her with a screwdriver. What happened next shocked the entire country and left a family reeling. But the real question, why Rian and what twisted switch flipped in him that night? As we reveal what really happened that night, tell us where you are watching from and hit the subscribe button. It helps us reach more people. Earlier that evening on October 20th, 2024, Ryan was doing her usual routine, handing out snacks, chatting with coworkers, just being her upbeat, quirky self. But across the cafeteria sat Dung, alone, hood up, and staring at her with this intense, unbroken focus that immediately set people on edge. This wasn't a casual glance. Staff members later described it as the kind of stare that makes your body instinctively tense, like your brain is whispering, "Something's off here." On the 20th of October last year, Majek, circled in green, kept staring at Rian, seen here with blue hair. One colleague said it felt like he was planning something. He was. And the thing is, it wasn't just Rian. Several women said he stared at all three of them the same way, eyes wide, expression blank, like he wasn't even fully present. One woman described it as him looking through them, which is honestly one of the creepiest ways you can describe a person. Watch the man in the gray, feet up, staring at the women behind the bar as they handed out snacks to the asylum seekers living at this hotel. And it didn't help that a little later, CCTV showed him brushing past Rian and her coworkers outside the hotel. There was plenty of space, but he still walked close enough for physical contact. It wasn't accidental, felt deliberate, and the women knew it. They were uncomfortable enough that they reported it to security and asked them to keep an eye on him. That alone tells you how tense the atmosphere was. But nothing really changed, and the night moved on as normal. Rian finished her shift, still completely unaware that the man she'd been serving snacks to had been watching her with an intensity that made everyone else uneasy. What makes the whole thing even more tragic is that Rian genuinely cared about the people she worked with. She always listened to their stories and tried to help where she could. She never imagined one of them would turn into a threat. But Dung wasn't just watching her. He was waiting, and once her shift ended, he followed. Rian clocked out that night at around 11:10 p.m., the same way she always did, upbeat, exhausted, and ready to get home to her little boy. She called her best friend, Emma, as she walked toward Biscott Stadium Station, completely unaware that every step she took was being mirrored by someone behind her. After she finished her shift at 11 p.m., Rian left the Parkin Hotel on foot, crossing a car park and walking under the motorway to reach Biscott Stadium Station. CCTV shows her moving through the car park and up the bridge to the platform, chatting away like it was just another Sunday night. But here's where the timeline tightens in a way that makes your stomach drop. Just minutes after Rian crosses that bridge, Dung appears on the exact same camera, walking the exact same route, almost like he was tracing her shadow. Those few minutes were the difference between life and death. When he reaches the top of the stairs, you can actually see him pause and look around, checking which direction Rian went before turning to follow her. Meanwhile, Rian is still on the phone with Emma, laughing, talking about her night, totally oblivious to the danger creeping up behind her. Then suddenly, mid-conversation, Emma hears silence. Not the my signal dropped silence, the kind that feels instantly wrong. She calls Rian's name once, twice, nothing. And then she hears it, A scream, sharp, terrified, high-pitched. Emma later said it didn't even sound like Ryan at first. It sounded like someone who'd been caught off guard in the worst way possible. Investigators later discovered that this was the moment Dung launched the attack. The platform cameras, the ones that could have shown everything, conveniently weren't working that night, but the injuries told the story. It was here that he stabbed Ryan 23 times with a screwdriver. Within 2 minutes, CCTV captures him casually walking back down the bridge. No panic, no urgency. On his hand, you can actually see Ryan's phone still lit up from her call with Emma. And he goes and tosses it into the river like it meant nothing. And while Rionan lay dying on that cold platform, Dung was already moving on to the next part of his night. A part so disturbing that even seasoned detectives struggled to wrap their heads around it. Emma, who lived in another town, was struggling to understand what had just happened to her best friend. She immediately called the police, but in the panic of the moment, she couldn't remember the name of the hotel where Ryan worked. So, she called Ryan's family, her voice shaking, and they, terrified and confused, called the police themselves. By the time officers and paramedics reached the station, Ryan had already been found slumped on the platform by the guard of the train she was supposed to catch home. It was a scene no family should ever have to imagine. Meanwhile, Dung was doing something no one could have predicted. He wasn't even shaken or pretending to be scared by what happened. Instead, he casually strolled into a convenience store, bought himself some beer, and headed back to the hotel like this was just another night stroll. And then comes the part of the footage that makes people gasp out loud. Inside the hotel corridors, the very place Rihanna had worked hours earlier, Dung starts dancing, not a nervous shuffle or a jitter. He's full-on celebrating, grinning, moving, almost buzzing with excitement. It's the kind of moment that makes you sit back and ask, what is actually wrong with this man? This is the depraved dance of a murderer high on his crime. Deng Chong-majek had attacked a staff member from the Asylum hotel where he was being housed. Moments later, CCTV shows him outside in a nearby car park with friends, blasting music, smoking, and drinking. The wildest part, behind him, you can see the flashing blue lights from the ambulance and police who were fighting to keep Ryan alive. Those two worlds, chaos and celebration, were happening side by side. Hotel staff later said he looked happier than before, like his mood had completely transformed after the attack. And honestly, that contrast is one of the most disturbing details in this entire case. It wasn't just violence. It was violence followed by joy. Very cold-blooded, in my opinion. Very odd. And having committed such a horrendous, horrific attack, savage, I would call it. And how he could then behave the way he did afterwards in such a jovial way dancing. I can't get my head around that. But here's what investigators found even more shocking. By the way, if you've gotten this far, thank you. Like this video, subscribe to our channel and keep watching. The story is getting more interesting. The evidence he left behind and the unbelievable excuses he tried to give for all of it. Because once detectives walked into his hotel room, what they uncovered didn't just link him to the crime, practically told the entire story for him. It didn't take long for detectives to connect Dung to Ryan's attack. The CCTV trail practically walked them straight to his door. Body cam footage even shows officers waiting outside his room, bursting in and finding him asleep, almost as if he genuinely believed he'd just slipped through the cracks unnoticed.
Don't do that!
Just leave him there for now. That's all this.
You got the jacket on.
Stand up.
Stand up. Right, stand up there for me.
I'm going to say to him. Yeah.
And they didn't even need to search. The evidence was sitting there in plain sight, almost like it was waiting for them. His jacket, his ring, his sandals, the exact items caught on camera as he followed Rionan toward the station were all laid out, and every single one of them was stained with her blood. And this wasn't a small smear or accidental transfer. Investigators described a lot of blood, the kind you only see after a very violent attack. They even found Ryan's DNA underneath his fingernails, a detail that's almost impossible to explain away. but somehow Dung still tried. He insisted the clothes weren't his, the DNA wasn't his, and apparently the man caught on CCTV in the same outfit at the same time in the same places wasn't him either. Prosecutors didn't hold back. They called his excuses laughable, and honestly, that was putting it mildly. The jury was shown the full CCTV timeline. Dung staring at female staff in the cafeteria, Dung following Rihanna toward the station, Dung returning minutes after the attack, and Dung dancing outside the hotel afterward. Still, he doubled down. According to him, the cameras were wrong, the DNA was wrong, and somehow the police had confused him with himself.
I mean, the level of brutality there is some of the worst I've seen in my 18 years of service in the police. Her poor family had to hear all of that evidence in court, and I think it's testament to the character of the defendant that he chose to put them through that.
He was initially charged with attempted murder, but that didn't last long because once investigators started digging into who he really was, his real age, his past in Europe, and how he ended up in the UK, the case took a sharp and unexpected turn. And that twist didn't just deepen mystery, it exposed something far bigger and far darker than anyone expected. Once investigators started digging into Dung's background, things got messy fast, and not the kind of messy where someone wrote the wrong date on a form. This was the kind of messy where every version of his life story seemed to contradict the last. In court, Dung said he was 19, but when prosecutors pulled his German identity documents, they showed a completely different date of birth, January 1st, 1998. That would make him 27, almost a full decade older than what he was claiming. When asked about the discrepancy, he shrugged it off and said the authorities had guessed his age. Convenient explanation, right? And then there was his travel history. According to official records, Dung wasn't a newly arrived refugee with nowhere else to go. Germany had already denied his asylum claim. Instead of going through the appeal process, he left, crossed several countries, and eventually arrived in the UK just 3 months before Rian was murdered. But the part that really made investigators pause was this. Everywhere he went, there were gaps, missing details, conflicting stories. He said he left Sudan at 16. He said he'd lived in Libya. He said he passed through Italy and Germany, but none of it lined up. And the more questions police asked, the stranger the answers became. And if investigators were confused before, things were about to become even more troubling. Rian spent 3 days in the hospital while doctors did everything they could to save her. Her family never left her side. They talked to her, held her hand, whispered prayers and little promises, hoping she might squeeze their fingers or blink just once. But her injuries were simply too severe. Most of the wounds were to her head. 11 of them were so deep they pierced her skull, and one reached her brainstem. There was no coming back from that. On October 23rd, surrounded by the people who loved her most, Rian took her final breath. Her sister later said the moment she had to tell Rihanna's young son will haunt her forever.
Alex had to explain to him that a bad man had hurt her.
So I initially explained to him that she had a poorly brain, and we tried really hard, and the doctors tried really hard, but they couldn't fix her brain. So she had to go to heaven.
She described the sound of his screams as a raw, confused heartbreak from a child who couldn't understand why his mom wasn't coming home. The scream that left that child that day will haunt me for the rest of my life. The family called that week hell on earth, and there's really no better way to describe it. What made everything even harder to swallow was Dung's complete lack of remorse. He never took responsibility. He never apologized. He didn't even show emotion. Throughout this trial, we have been given no reason as to why he chose Vianine. No accountability for his actions and no remorse. The family wanted real accountability. No deportation. No technicalities. Just for him to spend the rest of his life behind bars. Life for a life. None of this deportation.
Life for a life. None of this deportation. I'm not against asylum seekers, whatever, but he's taken my daughter away. He doesn't deserve to be sent back to his own country. Serve his time here.
And in the end, a jury agreed. After just 2 hours and 5 minutes, they unanimously convicted him of murder and possessing a screwdriver as an offensive weapon. Dung stood there in the dock, listening to the verdict that would define the rest of his life. And he didn't flinch. Not a single expression crossed his face. There were gasps and tears of relief from Ryanan's family as Majek was convicted. Originally from Sudan, it's believed he came to the UK on a small boat last summer. But even after the verdict, one question still hung over the entire case. How did a man with this history, these warning signs, and this behavior end up in that hotel to begin with? This case shined a very harsh light on the UK's asylum system, especially how people are vetted, monitored, and supported once they arrive. And while the UK has since tightened parts of its asylum policy, it does leave one uncomfortable question hanging in the air. If these cases slipped through before the rules were strengthened, how many dangerous people are still out there waiting to strike? If you found this story as haunting as I did, take a second to like this video and hit subscribe. It helps bring more awareness to the real stories behind these unbelievable cases. Every victim matters and every story matters. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.